What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, talking today about PlayStation because over the course of the last 10 days, I've made a lot of videos about the PlayStation leaks, the crazy Sony hack and what's been actually revealed, top secret contracts, financial details, upcoming games. It's been a very wild couple weeks for PlayStation. But something that's kind of fascinated me the most personally has been the fact that we now know that Sony isn't as rich as we kind of expect. With 50 million PS5s sold, tons of games charting on the best-selling games of the year list, you would expect them to have a lot more cash on hand, when in actuality, that's not the case. Sony is spending hundreds of millions of dollars developing their games, and sometimes they're not getting that back. So today, what I wanted to talk about is their actual sales numbers. Some internal metrics have been leaked that show the best-selling games ever by PlayStation, not just with the PS5, but also the PS4, PS3, PS2, and PS1. And I must admit, I'm kind of shocked how some of the most legendary games ever didn't sell as much as you might expect. And I also want to compare it to some Nintendo Switch sales numbers just to be a bit unfair. But let's talk about that. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you can like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. So essentially this is a copy paste. This is a big sales chart that somebody has put together and we're going to go over it. It's the top 100 games which we're going to look at, but we're going to start with the top 30. Now to be clear, this is not fully up to date. Some of these things, essentially they stopped updating it, 5 or 6 years ago. Some of them, like PlayStation 2 games, they're not even selling anymore. So we only have the most up-to-date data. So this is 99% accurate. Some of these numbers would be slightly off, but here's the part that I feel like a lot of people are freaking out about. These are the best-selling games ever in millions of units. Horizon Zero Dawn is the best-selling PlayStation game of all time. Like what? Like initially, as soon as you see that, it's just completely bonkers to see that it's sold 24 million copies, because I love Horizon a lot. I gave Zero Dawn a 10 out of 10, but when I think of it, I definitely don't imagine it as the best-selling PlayStation game ever, outselling all their much more legendary and much more influential titles. Now, I did see this great analogy where people are basically saying Horizon is the Avatar of the games industry. It's one of those things that has, lots of good graphics, it's a good showpiece, but a lot of people don't actually remember the details of it. Despite its sales success, it has no major cultural impact. I think this is a good analogy, even as a huge lover of Horizon and Forbidden West. I mean, it's funny to think about the fact that, you never hear people quoting Avatar, even though it's the biggest movie of all time. There's not people dressing up in cosplay. There's not people actually going to, Avatar conventions. So something like Star Wars, which is a smaller movie, is still a bigger cultural impact. So it's wild to imagine the fact that Horizon is this massive, followed very closely by God of War 2018. Now, something you're going to notice here is something I've talked about in videos, which is that video games are getting bigger. So much of the gaming industry has exploded during the PlayStation 4 era. I mean, it was truly the heyday of gaming becoming not just cool, but extremely mainstream. Everybody had to own a console. Everybody was gaming. And so it's interesting to see that you'll notice a lot of PlayStation 4 stuff here way up at the tippy top. Now, next up, Marvel's Spider-Man, 22 million copies sold. Uncharted, A Thief's End, 18 million copies sold. So some people are talking about the fact that these numbers are slightly skewed because of pack-in. Basically, if you're selling a console and you're including a game with it, that does count as a sale. So obviously anybody who bought a Nintendo Wii back in the day, Nintendo Wii Sports, that's basically just a little goofy game that everybody enjoyed, it came with the Nintendo Wii. So since the Nintendo Wii sold 100 million copies of the console, that means there's 100 million copies of Wii Sports. So some of these games that were a pack-in, like Uncharted and Last of Us Remastered, and to a lesser extent, Spider-Man was part of a Black Friday bundle, that is going to inflate the numbers somewhat. I don't think as much as people are kind of pretending it's like completely the success of this, but it is interesting to me that these games, again, I don't feel like I see that many people talking about Uncharted 4 compared to like Uncharted 3. It's wild still to think that they sold almost 20 million copies a pop. This one's absolutely wild to me. God of War Ragnarok has already sold 15 million copies. My God. Now, this one, I guess, isn't too surprising. Before Ragnarok came out, it won a bunch of fan polls as the most hyped game ever. So the fact that it actually sold this much, not a huge shock, but this amount is still just bonkers to me. Now, I want to specifically highlight some of the PlayStation 2 games on this list here because this is funny to me. Gran Turismo 3, Gran Turismo 4. What do we got down here? Where's some more PlayStation 2 games? You can see it's funny to see the fact that, honestly, these PlayStation 2 games that are near the top are Gran Turismo. Look at this. Gran Turismo, Gran Turismo, Gran Turismo. Man. People don't realize this, but Gran Turismo is the biggest selling sports racing franchise, just across the board. Gran Turismo is the top racing franchise of all time. I mean, it outdoes Forza, it outdoes everything else by a huge metric. But man, it's weird to see the fact that Gran Turismo 3 sold 15 million copies. Now, again, this was a pack-in, so some of these numbers are just because the PlayStation 2 was so big. Miles Morales. Now, I want to actually focus on some games here that I'm surprised about. The Last of Us Part 2 selling 10 million copies and Ghost of Tsushima selling just shy of 10 million copies. Both of these were the end of the PlayStation 4. Obviously, Ghost of Tsushima got its re-release on the PlayStation 5, but to me, it is wild that the last year of the PlayStation 4 was still such a heavy hitter. Sometimes in certain console generations, as you begin to sunset your hardware, games sell less. But with the PlayStation 4, games just kept selling more and more and more. Man, some of the stuff that I think I'm the most interested in is the fact that a lot of these PlayStation 3 games sold pretty good for how low the PlayStation 3 sold. The PS3 definitely was a very slow burn. It became popular towards the end of its life cycle, but there was for a long time. The PlayStation 3, when it first came out, was $600 for certain models of it. People were not thrilled. And so the Xbox 360 early on completely took off. So it's still cool to me, the amount of Last of Us, God of War 3, down here we have Uncharted 2. These games still sold millions and millions of units. Wow. Look at all these PlayStation 1 games on here. Wow. Crash Bandicoot Warped. The original Crash Bandicoot sold almost 7 million. Here's one that I think people are very much focusing on, which is Days Gone. Now, remember, Days Gone is not getting a sequel. Apparently, according to a bunch of talks by the developers, PlayStation did not like the fact that it was only getting 7 out of 10 review scores. It wasn't the best game ever. Now, myself, I even didn't like Days Gone that much, but I was hoping for a sequel that would actually improve on the less amazing aspects of it. So the fact that they have said we're never going to get a sequel to Days Gone, that sold 9 million copies. This is such a huge success. Now, a lot of people are poking fun at the fact that Mario Party Switch, which is considered to be the worst Mario Party, everybody is bad, it just absolutely sucks. Mario Party Switch, an absolute garbage Nintendo Switch game, has sold more than pretty much every PlayStation game ever. When you actually compare it, it's not even fair. The best-selling Nintendo Switch games, 57 million copies, 43 million copies of Animal Crossing, 32 million copies of Smash Brothers, Breath of the Wild, 31 million, Mario Odyssey, 27 million, my God, 26 million. Trying to compare Nintendo numbers to PlayStation numbers, not exactly a fair metric, but I wanted to actually go into this and look past the top 30. This is the full list posted over on Icon Era. And what's crazy to me is just the fact that honestly, a lot of these PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 games that to me are the most legendary didn't sell nearly as much as I would have predicted. Like right here, God of War sold 4.6 million, Ratchet and Clank 4 million, iToy sold freaking 4 million. That's completely shocking to me. Drive Club, Spyro the Dragon, Infamous Second Son sold 5 million. What the hell? Gosh, here's SOCOM. I think something you can definitely tell when you start to actually look at these numbers is the games that we expected to be huge successes were sometimes not as big as we thought. Like Twisted Metal 2, 1.7 million copies. Like that's the best car combat game ever. And it's below Crash Bash. Oh my gosh. Luckily we have Knack on the list. Here's something people have been talking about, which is that every Resistance and every Killzone game sold worse and worse. Wait, I can't even find it. Where's Resistance? Yeah, here we go. Resistance. Wow, Resistance Retribution. I love the Resistance and I love the Killzone games, but I guess it's obvious why they stopped making them. God, there's so many games on here that I just expected to sell more. Twisted Metal 4 sold 1 million copies. Killzone 2, one of the most legendarily overhyped games of all, sold 1 million copies. What the hell? Twisted Metal Black, 1.1 million. This is blowing my mind. Legend of Dragoon, 1.3 million. God, I guess I think this is just kind of opening our eyes to the gaming bubble. You know, like when you're inside the ecosystem, when you're inside these discussions, when you're spending time on YouTube, these games seem massive. They seem like they're taking over the entire planet. They seem like the biggest thing of all time. It's weird to think that all the Twisted Metals combined sold less than freaking Heavy Rain, an interactive movie game. Like, wow. It is just weird that gaming, as big as it is, as profitable as it is, as lucrative it is, I mean, sometimes sales are lower than you would expect. Little Big Planet 3 sold 5.3 million. There is no justice. These numbers are absolutely wild. But what do you guys think about it? Are you worried about the future of PlayStation? Are you at all just confused why some of your favorite games apparently were a lot less popular than you may have thought? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. Also, additionally, man, this really puts into perspective just how massive Nintendo is. Like, their sales numbers just don't even make sense. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.